Don, next one we're talking about is a huge, huge SEC game between Alabama and LSU. 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time on ABC. Really, this is always a massive game whenever these two teams face off because it's obviously a rivalry game and always two storied college football programs. But this is even bigger, I think. It's a playoff elimination game, in my opinion. Simply put, the loser of this game is effectively eliminated from college football playoff contention because both Alabama and LSU are 6-2 on the season, and a third loss would likely be a death knell for their playoff hopes. Because you look at it, Alabama does not play a currently ranked team the rest of the season, and LSU only has Vanderbilt left. And Vanderbilt might not even be ranked by the time this episode is done because we'll see what happens in college football playoff rankings. So, therefore, it's very difficult for the loser of this game to claw its way back up in the rankings and make the final 12. And I don't think a 3-loss team is getting in regardless, but when you don't have a tough rest of the season schedule, I don't think the loser of this game is getting to the college football playoff.
Yeah, I think if there were going to be a 3-loss team to make it, it would be out of the SEC because of all the strength of schedule arguments and all of that. But the facts are facts. You need to win the ball games that are in front of you, right? And when you look at LSU, that loss to USC kind of looks worse by the week, doesn't it? And then you talk about Alabama losing to Vanderbilt. And look, Vandy is very good. They're a very good team, but it's a game where Alabama was heavily favored and their defense played really poorly because they were playing poorly for a stretch. You got to remember, too, both of these teams barely beat South Carolina, who I know is also good, but it's not like they've been going out dominating every single week. You know, LSU had a good game against Arkansas. Alabama's had a couple of good games on their schedule, but this really does feel like the loser of this game has at least a major problem, if not maybe the end of their playoff hopes. You're absolutely right. I mean, it's a must-win game for both, and it should be a classic down there at night in Death Valley, shouldn't it?
I can't wait for this one. I really do think it's a playoff elimination game for each of those two teams. And honestly, kind of like what we said before with Ole Miss, like if you win the game, as long as you take care of business, you're in the college football playoff, right? So it's a really, really massive night game that we have. Probably the biggest game of the entire day, I would argue, between that and Ole Miss and Georgia is up there. But, Dawn, you have the LSU offense in this game. What should we be looking out for when they have the ball?
Okay, so I know Garrett Nussmeier is really good. He is really good. I don't have anything against Garrett Nussmeier, and you know, I'm not in on like some of the QB1 talk about him for the draft, but he's a really good player who they asked to do a lot, right? But in my opinion, they ask way too much of Garrett Nussmeier to just drop back and throw the football all night long without any help from a running game. And obviously he's not Jaden Daniels, so he's not going to take off and control the run game himself. And that's my biggest issue right now is it was kind of predictable that there was going to be some sort of drop-off going from a Jaden Daniels, who is the ultimate option threat, and you see all the things he's doing in the NFL now in Washington, to a Garrett Nussmeier, who is he can make some plays on the move, but he's essentially a pocket close to a statue quarterback, right? But LSU is just not balanced enough. I mean, they rank 104th in the country in rushing grade. They're 82nd. We talk about this offensive line being elite, and they're elite in pass protection. 82nd in run blocking grade. Yeah. Especially the right side of their offensive line has really been a struggle. Look, even Will Campbell's run blocking grade has dropped by 12 points this year. There has not been much for LSU in the run game, outside of running over South Alabama, cool. And Caden Durham at times has given him a spark, most notably in that South Carolina game when they really needed the run game to get him going. But they just don't, it's just not there. They don't have really any consistent balance, especially against the better teams on their schedule. And you're talking about going against an Alabama defense that, look, are they more vulnerable than in past years? Yeah, but they're still 7th in the country in run D grade. They're still on design carries only allowing 4.1 yards per carry, and they've played much better running teams like a South Carolina. Yeah, they've played better running teams than LSU. And even if you go back to last year's game, okay, Jaden Daniels tore him up with his legs, but the running backs had 13 carries for 43 yards. It's going to be hard for me to think they could go out here in a game like this, unless Garrett Nussmeier just does something special. He does some Joe Burrow nonsense out there, which I don't think he's on that level. He doesn't even have those weapons, right? they need to find some balance. I mean, I think their best moments on offense have come when they have found that balance. They found some against Arkansas. They dominated Arkansas. South Alabama, cool. The second half of the South Carolina game, Caden Durham got going, cool. But you're relying on an offensive line that is not blocking as well, where you don't have an option quarterback, and a true freshman's your best running back. These are the facts. Your true freshman's your best running back. If Garrett Nussmeier pulls this off with no balance and LSU's going to run for 80 yards and he pulls off this win, okay, now you're going to start getting real like draft hype and stuff on all this, because LSU, to me, it's just an issue of a lack of balance. They need something in this run game to get going.
Yeah, and on the other side of the ball, they got to force Jalen Monroe to be methodical, because you've seen before he struggles when you take away the big plays, right? Because he's got an elite arm, elite mobility, currently leads all Power 4 quarterbacks with 12 rushing touchdowns on the season, 90.6 passing grade on 10-plus yard throws. That is 35th among all quarterbacks in the country. But Dolan, on throws were under 10 air yards, he only has a 67.9 passing grade. That is 84th in college football. So 35th in the country on throws 10 or more yards, and 84th when it's under 10 yards. But the issue is for LSU, they've had a lot of problems with mobile quarterbacks in the past. Lenora Sellers and Marcel Reed combined for 5 rushing touchdowns against LSU. Sellers ran for 107 yards total against LSU. And also, not only have they been prone to getting beat by mobile quarterbacks, they've been prone to be getting beat deep as well. They're 99th in the country in explosive pass rate allowed at 15.9%. So this is a bad matchup for them with a quarterback like Jalen Monroe, who's such an elite athlete with a massive arm, who wants to throw deep, and with a coach in Kalen DeBoer who also wants to throw deep. It's a bad matchup for them. I think for them to win this game, they need to force Jalen Monroe to be patient and methodical, which he does not want to be. He did against Georgia, but in other games you've seen him this year, really struggled to do that. Like South Carolina made him be patient, methodical. He couldn't really do too much against them. Tennessee, the same thing. Couldn't do too much against them. LSU's got to do the same thing in this game, but the problem is their defense has been prone to being beat by these kind of quarterbacks before, and the problem is, like, Lenora Sellers had a lot of success against them. Jalen Monroe is like a Lenora Sellers on steroids, honestly. So this is a big problem against this LSU defense.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, this has been the thing for a year and a half with LSU, and if you were to pick out one quarterback in the whole country, I think that LSU just does not want to see, it's probably Jalen Monroe. I mean, just between the running and the deep shots and LSU struggles in the secondary, and I think they need to keep themselves in this game. They do. I don't think they can if they get Milroe hitting a couple of those deep shots to Ryan Williams early, they're going to have a serious problem. So I'm with you on that. I think Alabama does have the right amount of balance on offense, but the centerpiece is Milroe. Obviously Ryan Williams on the outside, and LSU look. You mentioned it with the mobile quarterbacks. Marcel Reed comes in and tears them up. The Lenora Sellers thing, too. 107 rushing yards. He only played the first half of that game. He might have been on his way to 200 had he not turned his ankle before halftime. So LSU's defense, this is gut check time. It is, because they do have that. That's first and foremost to give Nussmeier a shot. They have to keep them in this game.
Absolutely. So, Dawn, ultimately, who will win this game and keep their playoff hopes alive, and who ultimately will see their playoff hopes probably take a fatal blow?
This is a hard game to pick, because you do have the Death Valley night game factor, and LSU is a good team. I mean, these are two very good teams. I think for as much as we've talked about their struggles and the losses, and they each have 2 losses, these are 2 very good football teams. But we were talking about this earlier. I'm kind of with you. You were telling me this, and I was like not sure who to pick here. I do think Alabama has just a little bit more, and I know it's on the road. I still think it's going to be close. Both teams are desperate because they know the stakes in this game. Yeah. That if you get this third loss now, you're probably going to be out of it, and it's going to be, for both of them, I think, probably considered a failure of a season, considering the standards of these 2 programs. I think it's tight. I think LSU goes down battling. I think Garrett Nussmeier gives you every last punch that he has, but I'm taking Alabama tight game 30-27. I think it's going to feel like they escape with a win, but it's the biggest win of their season. I think Milroe has a somewhat heroic effort in him, and I do think Alabama, their balance and their ability to run the ball, even with Jam Miller and Justice Haynes, I just don't know where that would come from for LSU. I don't know where the balance is. It feels like to me, if LSU is going to win this game, Milroe screws something up at some point, and Nussmeier plays the game of his life. And I don't know that that's coming, because it's so hard to just traditionally drop back and throw the football in Alabama without play action, without a whole lot else, without a whole lot of layers. There's no layers to LSU's offensive schemes. They just go out there and they run plays, and Nussmeier and the receivers have to be great. I'm taking Bama by a field goal.
All right, I'm taking Alabama by a bigger margin. I have Alabama in this one 37-24. I think Jalen Monroe, I think he's going to tee off against LSU. I really do. I think we're going to see a massive game from Jalen Monroe. And I love Garrett Nussmeier. I do, but I just don't think he'll have enough. Like I said, with an unbalanced offense like that, I don't think he'll have enough against Alabama in this one. So it's tough, because Death Valley is the ultimate equalizer, obviously, with that night environment and how great those fans are and how electric it gets at night there. But I think this is a big advantage for Jalen Monroe against that defense in this game. Maybe I could be proven wrong. Maybe LSU can pull it off, but I just think Jalen Monroe will be the best player on the field in this one, and I think he'll lead Alabama to a convincing victory and keep their playoff hopes alive while simultaneously killing LSU playoff hopes as well. So it's going to be a really fun game. I can't wait to watch it, but I do think Alabama wins that one. Hey, thanks for watching another episode of the PFF College Football Show. Please make sure you guys subscribe to the channel.
Also, subscribe to PFF Plus at subscribe.pff.com for all of the same data and grades that we use in our show, plus fantasy tools, betting tools, and our mock draft simulator.